Um, so yeah, it was it was a tough place at the time. You had to be tough, and and you had to watch your back because people would get beat up, sometimes for no reason or for very little reason. Um,
Yeah, a
and
friend of
I think
mine,
that's why I was like that when I was at Deke. I
tough.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, I was trying to protect myself,
Oh, I
you
see.
know.
You also have to reveal that you already talked to me about this, but you had a encounter with Sid Mead. You were like assistant with Gary. I remember
Oh
this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we went. Gary, I guess Gary. Yeah, Gary was still going to Art Center, and we found out that students can call Sid Mead and hang out with him and talk to him. And this was like what? So another friend gave me the phone number, and I called. I called him up, and he answered, and I said, "Hey, we're students at Art Center, and my friend Gary and I, we were wondering if we could come over and talk to you about art and stuff." And he was like, "Sure, you guys can come. Why don't you guys come over? Why don't you come over this Sunday and we'll talk?" And I was like, "Really? Great, And this was like, we were in college, so
He,
so hmm?
yes, Sid Mead did have one or two assistants at the time, didn't he, or something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I,
Okay.
I I didn't see them there.
Oh.
But yeah, so we went over to the house and he was living kind of close to, well, at least one of his houses. He had a
Oh.
really nice house, kind of behind the Chinese theater. Um, the Man's Chinese Theater. He lived, yeah, he had like a three-story house, um, kind of behind in that area.
Oh wow.
And so we went there, and he opened the door and he was smoking a cigarette, and he's like, "Oh, hello, boys. Uh, why don't you come on in?" You know. So we walked in, and he just started. He was nice, and he was showing us the house. He showed us around, and then we finally went up to his studio, which was on the top floor,
Hmm.
and um, it was kind of tough. We were having a hard time talking to him because I think he was pretty. I think he was kind of bitter. Um, he was kind of bitter and kind of resentful. I think I don't. Well, he wasn't resentful, but he seemed kind of burned out. And this is already post Blade Runner, so I thought it was kind of tough talking to him about his projects. I mean, he wasn't really being very forthcoming. I know Sid Mead's a super nice guy and everything, but it was a little bit difficult to talk to him because you're like going, "So what was it like working on Blade Runner? What did you do? And he'd go, "Well, they gave me the assignment and I did the work and I turned it in." And we go, "Oh, what about Star Trek: The Motion Picture? What was that like? What did you do? Well, they assigned me the project and I did the work and turned it in." It was kind of like that. And Gary and I are looking at each other going, this is not, you know, not as fruitful as we thought it was going to be.
Was why is he? Why did he come off that way? Was he trying to be like business like, or was he giving like keeping kind of the social distancing at the time?
I think he was. I didn't know it, but I'm thinking I'm thinking that he was already, um, a little probably getting a little
Burnt out.
beaten up. Yeah, a
Oh.
little burnt up or beaten by the system. I'm not sure, but it wasn't. It wasn't as there wasn't as much of a trade-off of any information or anything fun. It was just mostly, I got the assignment, I turned in the work, and I got paid. It was kind of like that. So, it wasn't as fun as we thought it was going to be because we look at his work and it's like so amazing and beautiful, and then he was speaking like that. It was kind of a shock, you know. So,
Mm.
but so yeah, we were there for about I think we were there for maybe about 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours. Um, and oh, the other thing that happened too was, do you have any artwork? Do you have any artwork we can look at? Do you have any originals here? And he's like, no, guys, not really. And we're like, oh, what about, and he had all these binders, on the wall. And we're like, what about these
What
binders?
about that?
What's in
Yeah.
these? And it says Blade Runner, it says Star Trek, it says all the major movies he worked on. He's like, those are just slides. And we're like, oh. So, so he goes, boys, you know what? I'll be right back. So he walked out of the studio, and I was like, I quickly, reached up and grabbed one of the binders, and I started flipping through it, and they were um, binders full of slides of his artwork, that he
Oh.
did on all the movies and stuff like that. I
Mm.
was like going, whoa, look at these! But they were, the little 35 millimeter
Yeah, little
slides.
slides. Yeah.
Yeah, and then then I saw two pieces of artwork sitting on the ground, and I picked them up, and he had artwork lying on the floor, like leaning up against a cinder block table, and um, and it was like, how come he didn't show us this, So Gary and I are like going, whoa, look at these paintings, and there were two paintings, and they were beautiful, they were incredible paintings, but he said he didn't have any paintings to show us. So
Wow.
yeah, I don't
So
know.
kind of standoffish, you know.
Yeah, a little strange. Um, but anyways, yeah, it was not what we thought it was going to be. We thought it was going to be. I thought he was going to do techno speak and
Oh, that.
be, you know, and be inspiring and stuff like that. But it just sounded like he was burned up or burned out. You know.
Did
So
he? Was it around the time that he got? He done well. Project with or on Blade Runner? Was he? Was just coming
yeah,
off that?
he already did a Blade Runner because I think this was 80. This must have been like 85 or 86 or something like that,
Mm.
right? And Blade Runner was 81, wasn't it? So
Oh, maybe 2010 Space Odyssey, the remake. That was much
right, right.
later after Blade Runner.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
don't know. I don't remember seeing that. Maybe. No, you know what? I don't think so. I don't think he had worked on 2010 yet.
oh, I see.
So, yeah. So,
If it was when did you see him again? Was it 80 mid 80s?
well, the first time we saw him at the convention, I think that was 82 or 83.
Mm,
And then when we went to his house, Gary and I went to his house, that was back in, I think that was in 86.
86.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
Mm. Yeah, I think that was before 2010 Space
hmm.
Odyssey movie. But even
Yeah.
Blade Runner work was incredible. I mean, those people who saw the art of, I think they were all very influenced by that work that he did on Blade Runner.
Yeah. All those incredible sketches that he
Yeah.
did. And, yeah, that in the spinner design.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, he was doing everything, that I wanted to do, as an artist. He was doing all that stuff and getting the big bucks and working on the big shows, the big movies.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I don't know, man. I mean, I tried painting with gouache. I worked with gouache for a while. It's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
that's a tough medium to use, and that's all he used. I think it was gouache and poster paint or something like that. Um, so he definitely was a master. Oh, and you know what? We we went to I went to his funeral a couple months ago,
Hmm.
and they had a lot of his artwork up on on stands, and I looked closely at some of these paintings that I had gawked at when I was a kid in a book, and I've never seen them for real before, and they were just masterful pieces.
The originals.
Yeah, the originals
Did
were there.
they? I hope they didn't have that glass or those reflective plastics over them.
They did. They had glass over them, but you could see the skill of his painting, his painting skill. I mean, it was just incredible.
Wow.
And the color control, yeah, just really, really, really amazing. But fast forward to working on the Clone Wars, I got to when I was working at Skywalker Ranch, we got to go into the archives.
Yeah.
And whenever we needed to see something that pertained to, something that we're doing, some spaceship or something we need a reference for, we could call up the archives and go there and check out the original stuff. And one time we went over there to go look at all the Ralph McQuarrie paintings. Yeah, man, that was amazing. And I got to hold them in my hand. Some of those paintings that you probably seen in the books and
The art of
and the Star Wars portfolio. All those paintings were, I think some of them were in the traveling show, but I got to see a lot of them, and hold them, and they were really small. They were like really tiny paintings. The ones he did for Star Wars were very, very small, and but they were masterfully done, just masterful. And
he used gouache too, didn't he? All
I
the
think
car guys did.
I think so, but he had. I don't know if he used it on the Star Wars paintings because he was drawing details with pencil. I think he was using a mechanical pencil, and so he draw panel lines and some raised panels and detail and things like that with pencil. And I don't think gouache can hold up if you draw on top of gouache. I think it'll crack it, or you know what I mean. If you don't lay that gouache on perfectly, I think it's going to be really tough to draw with a sharp pencil on top of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it will crack. Yeah.
I think he used cell vinyl, and I think he was using cell vinyl and something else, some other poster paints, or I forgot, but I think they were more durable. And he was mixed media too, so I think he was.
I see.
I think he would draw it out with pencil first, and then he would just put a tone over the painting, and then he would just start, kind of going in and out using darks and lights.
Yeah.
And use the white of the board, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
For whites, he would use the white of the board. So.
Yeah, he. I mean, I've never. No, I did see a Star Wars show back in early '90s in San Francisco, but I don't think I've seen his paintings, like real paintings. I've seen a lot of props and models, but his paintings always look very thin to me. It doesn't look like thick. Like Sid Mead paintings look thicker because he would build it up.
They are.
Yeah.
Yep. They definitely are. Yeah. Yeah, they're not very thick. Except, well, it depends. I got to. I don't know if you know that painting where he did the all the bounty hunters all posing on Bespin, and you see Boba Fett and you see IG-88 and all that. That painting was thick. But the other paintings he did, like the pre-production paintings he did for Star Wars, they were pretty thin. They were thin and small, but and the line precision was stunning. I mean, he was drawing really, really precision work with really, really with a very, very sharp pencil, and I was like, going, how is he doing this? What kind of pencil is he using? Because it was very black. It's like I don't know what he was using. I'm wondering if it was a fixative. I was wondering if he was drawing with a regular graphite pencil, and then if you spray fixative on it, it becomes blacker. Because when you really look at pencil, right? Pencil is actually kind of silvery, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of gray and silver. It's not really very black.
No.
So, and his pencil lines were black. And I never, when I got to hang out with him, you know, around that time, he was already his Parkinson's was already pretty bad, so
Mm.
he had a very, very tough time talking to anyone. Um, but I would try to talk to him, and sometimes he could respond to me, but most of the time it was like really, really difficult. He had a very difficult time talking, I think, at that point. So, but me and my friend Stan Stice, who was publishing a lot of Ralph McQuarrie's books and posters and things like that, we would hang out there and try to talk to him and just try and visit him, and say hi and stuff like that every so often. And that was really good. I just wish I was able to. I just wish you know, he was more capable of talking because I would have loved to have asked him about his experiences, especially his experiences in the Korean War
Oh,
and the experiences he had working, on the first movie and stuff like that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but I did find out later that I think I either somebody told me or I saw an interview, but I found out later that Ralph McQuarrie found his peace with George is basically the way he stated it. That he had forgiven George and forgiven, um, what he thought was, um, you know, being slighted by the production and all that stuff. I think he had forgiven all that stuff, and he like so. I guess at the time I saw him back in '82 or '83, he was pretty bitter, and then later on he finally um, became more grateful about the situation. You know.
Did Lucas like took extra care? I mean, he must have heard or felt something from Ralph McQuarrie, like a negative energy or something, and then did George Lucas, did he like at least try to you know say yeah, I took advantage of you? Didn't he come out saying something like that on DVD or something?
Ralph,
Lucas.
I don't know if he. Well, definitely don't think George said that, but I know that um, I saw Ralph's in Ralph's studio in Berkeley, he had a check hanging over his table, like he tacked it onto the window in front of his table, and it was a check um, for a royalty
Wow.
from I think it was from Empire Strikes Back or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
and it was something like I think it was like $1.49 or
Oh
something
my
really
god.
absurd, and he had that check like tacked onto the wood in front of his table. So, and I'm not sure about this, but I had heard that George gave him a half a point or a quarter point, something, and apparently the creative accounting they made it so that he didn't really make any royalties or didn't make very much from it, you know. So, and I think that's why he tacked it on his wall. It's kind of like a you know sarcastic statement.
Yeah, he didn't even deposit or cash it. It was so little compared to what
Yeah.
his input. He's just like this guy's beep beep, blip blip. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was I remember there was some talk about how Ralph had been such a influence on the movies, and yet he, there was I think this was going on for a while actually. He had been such a huge influence on the movies, and he really didn't get, you know, the he didn't get very much money for it, and he got some accolades from the books, but he didn't get a whole lot from it, and a lot of people were sort of up in arms, like, "What's going on, George? Why did that happen?" But when you really come down to it, it's Ralph is the one that agreed to the amount of money he was making, and he agreed to work under those conditions, and in a sense, that's what happens if you're not careful, right? If you're not careful with the conditions under which you're working for, you're going to get, you know, people are going to take advantage. So, and not that George was taking advantage. but those were the conditions that Ralph had agreed to. I don't know what it was, 2,000 a week. Who knows how much he was getting paid? But maybe he was getting a salary. But who knows if Ralph said, "Well, I'd like royalties if you don't mind." I don't think that was the case. I think George gave points out just on the kindness of his own heart. Because I've heard that. I've heard that George gave um, Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher and Harrison. I think he gave them points, and
Yeah.
that was not in their contract.
Mm.
So, and and from what I'm heard, I heard Ralph got half a point or a quarter point or something like that, but not from Star Wars. I think he got it from Empire. So, and somehow the creative accounting made him get $1.49 or something like that. It was like,
Jeez, that is like, wow. I mean, the amount of money that Lucas made or is making. I mean, $1.49 to an artist who sort of set the look of
yeah,
Star Wars.
yeah,
That's like an insult.
yeah. But what are you going to do, right? I mean, if he agreed to, I'm sure Ralph wasn't thinking that this was going to be the biggest movie of all time, and I want royalties. You know what I mean? I'm sure Ralph was like going, "Oh, sure, I'll work on this B movie." You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
I wonder if he made another deal, different deal from Star Wars to Empire Strikes Back. Did he change anything? Like, I want this and this and this.
I don't know. I hadn't heard. I haven't heard anything. But by the time he got to um, Return of the Jedi, he was no longer being used as a designer. He was just being used as a painter of the Star Wars portfolio for Return of the
Oh,
Jedi. You know what I mean? So he wasn't
yeah.
really designing anymore. I think he was. I think if I recall correctly, I think they had Milo Rodas Jamero and they had Joe Johnstone and a few other people that were doing designs. I mean, I think Ralph work on the A wing, but I don't think they used part of it, but not all of it. Um, but I don't think Ralph was as instrumental in because the look was already established by then, anyways, right? He
Yeah.
established the look in Star Wars, so Empire and Jedi, were just follow-ups. They didn't necessarily need that. So, but I know let's see, he was doing design. He did a lot of designs for Bespin. But you could tell too. I mean, you could tell those paintings. He wasn't very happy. You could tell because you could see the enthusiasm and the expertise, and you could see the how inspired he was with the Star Wars artwork.
The
But then when
first
you see
one,
the
yeah.
yeah, first one, and then when you see the Empire artwork, you kind of see it waning a little bit. The work is not quite as deft, and it's not quite, you know what I mean. It looks like it's a little more difficult. You could see it in the artwork that he wasn't as happy and wasn't as inspired. So I don't know what was going on. I mean, there's stuff going on in the studio that we don't know of because we're not there. That maybe wasn't in his favor. And then obviously when I saw him in '83, he was a pretty bitter dude. So,
Yeah.
um, so
I wonder
uh,
if I got the sense that between Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back that Joe Johnston took more of a lead as a designer for spaceships and the props and
yeah,
weapons and he even did storyboards, but to to I'm just guessing here, to Lucas, Joe Johnston design was what Lucas preferred compared to Ralph McQuarrie's spaceships and props.
yeah, yeah. Because Ralph's designs were a little more Flash Gordon looking. They were a little more, just a little. They had a little more of a '50s or '60s kind of uh, bent to them. They were like a little more, yeah, they're a little more Flash Gordon like.
Yeah,
And Joe's stuff was more like hardcore machinery.
yeah.
Um, and and Colin Cantwell, who did
Yeah.
all the original models, the initial models. He was helping George develop the look of the spaceships and stuff like that. Um, Joe Johnstone took those and he made them, I guess you could say, more sporty, more, um, more
Hot
cool.
rod.
More hot rod is a good word for it. Um, and then, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, Ralph took Joe Johnstone's drawings and he put them in his paintings. So I don't, but we do know that Ralph designed Darth Vader. He designed the stormtroopers. Um, he designed R2D2, and he didn't quite design
C3PO.
C3PO.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, he did a version of C3PO, but they ended up going on a. I think was it Stuart Freeborn or I forgot who it was that designed C3PO. They did a completely different look because I think Ralph's looked a little bit too much still like the robot um, from that old uh, black and white movie.
Metropolis.
Metropolis, right? I think his robot was still looking too much like the Metropolis robot, and then they just gave it to um, uh, the guys that were building the suit, and they came up with the C-3PO look,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah, at the time there were a lot of controversy about that, about C3PO and the robot from Metropolis. Like,
right,
I remember
yeah,
seeing that on the TV and like some expose things criticizing the new. There were a lot of criticism against Star Wars at the time. Like, did they rip off 2001? They rip off Metropolis. At the time, I remember
hmm
seeing like a little like shows like that.
yeah. No, Star Wars is it's the Hidden Fortress.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's the Hidden Fortress. It's um, Foundation by Arthur C. Clarke.
Mm.
It's a little Flash Gordon. It's a little bit of Dune. It's a little bit of the Berserker series by Fred Saberhagen. It's and I think if I'm not mistaken, it's got some John Carter of Mars in it too, right?
Yeah,
With the swords.
yeah,
And I don't know exactly where he got the laser swords from, but Larry Niven had swords like that. They were these swords that were they would come out of the hilt, and it was like like an atom-sized wire,
yeah. It was
and
sliced through ships and things, wasn't it?
yeah, it could slice through anything. It could slice through anything, any metal, and Larry Niven came up with that way before Star Wars. So, I don't know where else George may have gotten the inspiration for the lightsabers, but there was a lot of, and the Berserker series, right? The Berserker books by Fred Saberhagen. Those were those planet-sized. They were planet-shaped vehicles that were flying around, blowing up planets and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um,
incredible. Yeah,
yeah, and then the Foundation is the Empire. The Foundation series by Arthur C. Clarke is the Empire. The established Empire and things. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of, and then of course, you look at Darth Vader, and he looks like a mechanical Japanese samurai. You
yeah.
know, he's got he's got armor that looks like Japanese samurai armor.
Samurai.
Which is Ralph came up with that stuff too. Or maybe they were talking to each other and they were discussing using kind of Japanese samurai armor as inspiration.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I bet. Because Lucas was very influenced by Kurosawa movies, so,
right,
there are tons of those helmets, samurai helmets
yeah,
with that looks like Darth Vader helmets.
yeah. And also World War II, right? The
Yeah.
rebels, I think, right? The rebels and the Empire, they both had those really big, like flak helmets, those
Hmm.
things that have the big, um, like a hood on the back of your head. And I think both the rebels and the Empire had those big hoods that go on the back of the head that the flak gunners would use on Navy ships and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all. But that's all really just awesome design. Just fantastic stuff. But that's a thing. That was a cool thing, I guess, about Star Wars, right? Is just grabbing all these influences and pulling them together into one kind of dramatic fantasy science fiction show.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree that they took all the cool stuff and made it into Star Wars look. I mean,
Yeah.
if you do anything, if we draw something and say, hey, that looks like Star Wars, so they made it their own look by grabbing all the cool sources from different, countries and eras.
Yeah. hmm And what's amazing too is like when you watch The Hidden Fortress, there's so much that George used from The Hidden Fortress, right? Like the R2D2 and C3PO were telling the story in Star Wars, and it's the same thing in The Hidden Fortress, right? You got the taller Japanese guy and the shorter one, and the whole story is being told through these two peasants.
Yeah.
And which is what sort of C3PO and R2D2
Yeah,
are, right? They're kind
exactly.
of, we don't want your kind in here, get them out of here, get them out of the bar. We don't want robots in here, like like these are less than people, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, anyways, so back to what we were talking about earlier. I guess my work, I was I loved Ralph McQuarrie's work so much. I think I just started painting like him, and then eventually I got a job working with Genndy Tartakovsky on the animated Clone Wars, right? The 2D animated Clone Wars. And one of the reasons why they hired me, one, was because my friend helped me get my portfolio to Genndy, Mike Kim. You remember Mike Kim, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He helped you?
Yeah, he knew Genndy.
Oh.
And
As a director or as a storyboard artist?
I don't remember how they knew each other.
Okay.
But he was friends with Genndy, and then he was able to get my portfolio, and Genndy liked my work because it looked like Ralph McQuarrie's work. So I worked on the second season of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And then what, 3 years went by, and then George wanted to start the Lucasfilm Animation, and they had hired Dave Filoni, and I already knew Dave Filoni through my wife. My wife was friends with Dave Filoni, and Henry Gilroy was friends with Dave Filoni as well, and Henry was a writer, and I knew him from Warner Brothers, when we worked on Batman.
Yeah.
And so they knew that I was very passionate about Star Wars, and we were, I knew Dave. We weren't friends, but I knew him, and hung out with him a couple times. But Henry was my friend, and they were like, let's get Russo let's get Russo on the show. So that's when they called me up, and we met at a restaurant. We talked about all the things we were going to do on this new animated series, and that we were going to have to move up to the Bay Area, from Los Angeles to the Bay Area. So it's pretty exciting time.
Yeah, I remember that when you got on the show and you were moving up to San Francisco. I mean, you had a place in Burbank, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
And you moved up. And you were there for a very long time, like 5 years or something like that.
7 years. Yeah.
Oh, you made a lot of money, I think. You're always making money.
Gotta make money, man.